little tiny silver linings, if you will, of this pandemic. Because I think before the pandemic, I never got to connect with so many international audiences as after the pandemic. So I have to say that's one thing that I kind of thank God about, that he gave us these wonderful technologies to be able to feel so connected. By the way, I hope that towards the end of the presentation, I hope that more of you will be able to turn on your camera so I'll get to see your beautiful faces. It would be nice to meet, to meet you visually as well. So that would be great. I hope we get to do that. But tonight I'm going to be talking about cancer. And this is one of the topics that for me are very important. I speak about a lot of different health topics, like diabetes is one of my specialties, and heart disease and prevention and other things. But when it comes to cancer, it touches me personally because I have many family members who have passed away due to cancer, different types of cancer. Both of my grandparents, maternal and paternal grandfathers died of cancer. And then my mom's younger sister died of breast cancer at the age of 39. So that's very young. So with many, many cases of cancer in my family, I feel that there is somewhat of maybe a genetic predisposition possibly. And the other thing about cancer is that when we talk about diabetes, which is important to talk about diabetes, hopefully in your week-long event, you will have somebody speak about diabetes, because I was noticing that in Jamaica, it is one of the major causes of death. But diabetes and heart disease, being major, very important causes of death in the world, are known to be reversible through lifestyle. So like was mentioned before, I am a member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I've been certified. And one of the things we teach is the reversal of these conditions that used to be thought to be chronic and incurable, but now we know that they could be cured. So that's important to know, that these conditions don't have to be chronic forever. They could be reversed, in fact. But when it comes to cancer, it's a little different. And in fact, when I'm speaking with different audiences, I always ask, especially if I'm on an in-person type of event or presentation, and I ask people, what comes to your mind when you think about, or when you hear the word cancer? What comes to mind? What do you think about? And most people, I have to admit, most people will say something like death, or like terminal, or something like that. Like most of us, when we hear the word cancer, it brings to mind the idea of death, the idea of being maybe condemned to die, because cancer is a scary word. And unfortunately, in the United States, we are not allowed to study or in fact to implement any types of cures or treatments for cancer, except for 3. There's only 3 treatments for cancer that are legal in the United States of America. And those are chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, and that's it. So you can't really even study how to treat cancer with nutrition, but you can definitely study about what certain nutrients do to the risk of cancer. So we'll talk about that tonight. But before, let me show you, this is the chart for the United States in regards to the 10 leading causes of death. And as we see, heart disease is number 1, cancer is number 2 in the United States. But let me tell you something, this cancer right here is all types of cancer combined. We're talking about dozens of different types of cancer. Now, when I was looking for the information on Jamaica, because I wanted to give you something, that is relevant for you in your country, I found something very interesting. So this is the chart that I was able to find for the 10 leading causes of death in Jamaica from 2019. They might not, I don't know, 2020, probably after 2020, just like in every other country, COVID-19 will be among the 10 first causes of death. But even before, if we just look at pre-COVID, this is very interesting to me that Jamaica is a little different, because here you have stroke as number one, which is very, very interesting to me, stroke being number one. Number two, diabetes. Wow. That's one of my specialties. And I'm like, wow, really, diabetes is number two? Heart disease. And here we have cancer, number 5, but it's only one type of cancer. I showed you in the United States, we have cancers number 2, but it's all cancers. And over here in Jamaica, you have prostate cancer all by itself. That was pretty interesting to me. I don't know about you. Wow, prostate cancer all by itself is number 5. And then you have different types of lung cancer and different types of respiratory disease over here in number 10, I think. This is just a single cancer. To me, that's very interesting because I've never seen that. So obviously cancer is a very important disease that we need to speak about. Now, let me show you something that will give us the background to what we're going to talk about. And it's the stages of cancer and the stages of development of cancer. Because once cancer is developed, then you speak about different, phases of cancer, stages of cancer, like stage 2 cancer or 4 or something. But in order to get to cancer, when we talk about the development phase of cancer, before it's actually diagnosed, we can mention 3 important stages. And this is important to mention because this will really help us understand that cancer doesn't have to happen. It's not inevitable. It's not 100% only genetic, and lifestyle has nothing to do with it. That's not necessarily true. So I want to show you the stages of development of cancer. And there's 3 listed here. Initiation being number 1. Promotion is number 2. And progression is number 3. You're probably asking yourself, what are these different stages? What do you mean by that? And so initiation, we normally speak of initiation when we talk about some kind of DNA damage to a cell. So we start off with normal cells that are then damaged by either chemicals or radiation, some kind of toxin or something, in the air. Could be smog, it could be smoke from cigarette smoking, or it could be chemicals in our environment, in our cleaning products. In fact, even clothing nowadays has a lot of synthetic fibers and a lot of synthetic types of elements that we are in touch with. The paint in our walls, all kinds of things, plastic. A lot of people drink water from plastic bottles that, of course, has a lot of chemicals in it. And viruses, interestingly enough, because now we're in a pandemic. So how does this pandemic play a role? It probably does. Because now COVID has been found to cause so much damage in the body long term that it's possible that it could probably put us at a higher risk for cancer as well. But anyway, all these things then cause a damage to cells. And these damaged cells, unfortunately, many times are not caught by our immune system. Normally, our immune system would be in charge of protecting us, not only from viruses and bacteria, but also from damaged cells, which are produced in our bodies every day, probably. But our immune system is supposed to take care of them. But sometimes that doesn't happen. And when that doesn't happen, then these defective cells start to reproduce. And they start then proliferating. Instead of having 1, now you have 2, and then you have 4, and then 8, 16, and so on and so forth. And so then after proliferation, you get to a point where you might have then a mass of these damaged cells. And when you have that, then you probably have cancer by then. But this is the process that can take decades. And what I'm going to try to express to you tonight is that it's not necessarily a one-way street that is, once it gets initiated, there's no stopping it. Like I said, we do have a lot of things that initiate cancer in our environment. And I'd like to mention a few that are well known. For instance, the two most well known, somewhat controversial, one of them, but for sure proven by scientific research to be initiators of cancer, are tobacco, number one. There's like zero doubt about the certainty that tobacco is a carcinogen. But a few years ago, alcohol was not necessarily in the list of well-known carcinogens. In fact, I remember my dad, may he rest in peace, he's passed away now. But before he passed away, I used to talk to him on the phone because he lived in Chile, I lived in California, and I would talk to him on the phone, and he would tell me that his doctor had recommended that he drink 1 little cup of wine, red wine to be more precise, every night, that he should have a little bit of wine every day for his heart. Because my dad had heart disease, he had diabetes, he had heart disease, he had lung problems. The only thing he didn't have was cancer. But his dad had smoked as well for all his life. My dad smoked too. His dad smoked as well. But his dad, my grandfather, did get lung cancer. And my dad told me, I was too young when he passed away, so I don't remember my grandfather too much. But my dad would tell me that his dad would take off his shirt. And when he took off his shirt, my dad would see tumors hanging from his back. The tumors were so big that you could see them through the skin, and they were almost hanging. And despite him seeing that, he still didn't stop smoking. He still smoked. Anyway, the point of this is that after years passed, back more or less in the 1990s, my dad would tell me that he would drink alcohol every night. Not a lot, not to get drunk or anything, but just a little bit. Moderate drinking. A lot of people do that nowadays. It's just a little bit, just a little bit. It's not bad. Well, what we have now is plenty of information. In fact, I don't think, and you know what my dad would say, by the way? He would say that the doctor told him to drink the wine every day. So he was obeying the doctor, right? And so I'm like, Dad, that's probably not good for you. No. The doctor said it's okay. Well, nowadays, 30 years or so after, I don't think there's any doctors that would recommend that anymore, because the scientific evidence that alcohol, even, listen to this, even in moderate amounts, that's the key. Even 1 drink for women or 2 drinks for men. So that could be a wine, it could be a beer, it could be, I don't know, tequila, whatever people, rum, I don't know what people drink, I'm not a drinker, but whatever, 1 little serving of alcohol for women or 2 for men per day is known to increase cancer risk, depending on which cancer, the amount, but it's a well-known carcinogen, alcohol is. I hope none of you drink, but if you do, that's something to consider. But having said that, hopefully most of us will not smoke or drink, I hope. So, and if you do, I hope you reconsider. But what about foods? Do you think, and here's a question, do you think that there might be any foods that could put us at a higher risk for cancer? Not only that, are there any foods that can have cancer initiators? So again, we go back to this 3 stages of cancer. Initiation being the chemicals or substances that cause damage to DNA and cause defects in cells that then start replicating. What do you think? Do you think there are any foods that might do the same thing? Well, let me show you something in regards to two foods, just two foods I'm going to talk about first. And this is straight from the World Health Organization. Well, this particular graphic is from Cancer Research UK, but this classification here comes from the WHO. And look at what we have with regards to two types of foods here. We have, well, two types of meat, more particularly. We have, first of all, we have something called processed meat. What in the world's processed meat? Things such as bacon, sausage, hot dogs, salami, processed meats. Well, what we have here is that these processed meats are put into something. So this is the classifications from the WHO in regards to carcinogens. And processed meats are put in group 1, and red meats mean pork, beef, lamb, does not include white meats such as chicken or fish. So these are just red meats. And red meats are put in group 2A. And you're probably wondering, what is that? What does that mean? Well, group 2A means it probably causes cancer. There's some evidence that this agent, in this case, red meat, might cause cancer, but the evidence is somewhat limited. So we have some evidence. Whereas group 1 means we have plenty of evidence. We have certainty that this agent, in this case, processed meats, is a carcinogen. It's a substance that is known to cause cancer in human beings. In this case, it's, I believe, prostate cancer and stomach cancer. In the case of red meat, is a longer list of cancers. I believe prostate cancer and colon cancer are there. But the interesting part of it is, of this whole thing, is the following: that group 1 is also the group where tobacco is classified. So tobacco and processed meats are put in the same category. In other words, you can almost say that eating a hot dog is the equivalent of smoking a cigarette. And I'm not exaggerating. This is known to be the case because of the level of risk associated with eating these foods. But the thing about it is, even though red meat is in a lower category when it comes to risk, we eat more of it. So as far as the attributable deaths numbers, there's actually more people that die from eating red meat a year than from eating processed meats, just because more people in larger quantities are eaten from red meat. So I just wanted to let you know that, so that you have some information in regards to this. What are some of the foods that might be somewhat more risky to eat? Everybody is supposed to, have free will. So, if you like to eat those foods, I'm not going to judge anybody. But it's good to know that it could be risky. So that way, if we decide not to engage in a risk behavior, then we know what exactly to avoid. The other thing that I wanted to also mention today is what is known about the risk of deep fried foods. And this is harder even for some people to swallow, so to speak, no pun intended. But deep fried foods are well beloved everywhere in Latin America, in the Caribbean, in the United States, of course. We love fried chicken and all these other things, right? And unfortunately, though, there's plenty of evidence that the regular consumption of some deep fried foods, and I think all deep fried foods, because it is actually the heating of the oil. A lot of people ask me, well, what type of oil is better for frying? And to me, that's like, I can't really give you an answer that you want. I know what you want me to tell you, but I can't give you that answer. There's no oil that I would tell you is safe for deep frying, because once you heat oil, that's where the problem comes in. Oils put at a high temperature suffer from oxidation. They suffer from changes in the molecular structure of oil. And that's what makes it dangerous. So any oil, olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. I mean, people try to look for the healthier oils. Of course, lard is worse. Yes, I agree. If you're going to change from lard to, let's say, olive oil, that's definitely a step in the right direction, because lard will have a lot of saturated fat, whereas olive oil will not. But if we deep fry anything, it's still dangerous. That's kind of the point that I wanted to make in regards, and this is talking specifically about prostate cancer. So even more relevant for Jamaica, because Jamaica, prostate cancer is the 5th cause of death all by itself. So that's important, I think, to remember, okay? Now, the rest of the information that I will give you in regards to nutrition comes from a book that I highly recommend you purchase if you haven't read it. And the name of the book is The China Study. You can probably get it on PDF, or not PDF, but Kindle or whatever. You can probably buy it on Amazon. You can probably get the electronic format or have it shipped. I'm not sure how it works, but you can probably get it. It is a very, very good book. I read it years ago, and I still utilize a lot of the information. It's changed many, many lives. So I highly recommend you read it if you haven't had the chance. T. Colin Campbell, and I also took there's a certification program, by the way, from the Center for Nutrition Studies at Cornell University. And it's the director is T. Colin Campbell, and he started this program, and it's a really, really wonderful certification program on plant-based nutrition. If you're ever interested in knowing more about plant-based nutrition, I highly recommend that program. Anyway, Dr. T. Colin Campbell is a nutritional researcher, and way back in the 50s, when he started in the field, he thought animal proteins were the best thing in the world. Well, he came from a farming family, they had dairy cows. And so, of course, he was going to try to help his family study nutrition and the importance of protein, to help his family's business. And he tells in the book a story about how early in his career, he was told to go study some cases of liver cancer in the Philippines, because there was a lot of cases of liver cancer in children in the Philippines. And before getting there, he made a hypothesis that it was probably due to the fact that poor children in the Philippines, in the 50s especially, poor children in the 50s in the Philippines did not have access to good quality animal protein. And therefore, they had to eat low quality vegetable protein, which in the case of the Philippines, mostly came from peanuts. And poor people didn't have access to good quality peanuts. They only had access to bad quality peanuts. And those bad quality peanuts were mostly stored in places that were too humid. So they probably had some kind of toxin that is found in stored peanuts when they have mold. Moldy peanuts have a toxin called aflatoxin, and is known to cause liver cancer. So it made sense. It made sense that children are probably getting the cancer from eating moldy peanuts, especially poor children, since they don't have access to good quality animal protein, such as meat or dairy. Okay, so then he went off to the Philippines to try to prove his hypothesis, but wouldn't you know it, when he got there and he started looking at the cases, it wasn't the poor children who were getting the cancer. It was the affluent families. It was the rich children, the kids who did have access to meat and animal protein. Those were the kids who were getting the liver cancer. And he started scratching his head. Didn't make any sense. He started reading some of the very, very, very few articles or few studies that had been done at the time with protein and cancer, almost nothing. So he decided to do a study. And he tells about that in the book. And let me just show you that this picture comes from the book. Sorry about the quality. I think I just scanned it. I don't remember where I got this picture, but it's directly from the book if you want to look at it. But in this picture, we have basically the microscopic pictures of tissue from different mice. He took a group of mice. Well, first of all, he had a control group to which no cancer was given to. But these three groups right here, B, C, and D, these were mice that were given cancer, initiation. They were all initiated, so to speak, with cancer. This was the only group that didn't have cancer. These three groups were initiated with cancer. Remember that. They were all initiated with cancer, but they were given different diets. And so we got a low protein diet, 6%. We got a medium protein diet at 14%. And then we got a high protein diet at 22%. And after a few weeks, they observed the tissue, as you can see. And over here, what we see is these black dots you see over here, all these black dots are cancer cells. So with the high protein diet, we see all of the mice develop cancer. And so here's an example. With the medium protein diet, not all of them, some of them, and not as much cancer. But with the low protein diet, no mice developed cancer. Right here, what you see in black is just a vessel. It's not a cancer cell. But these mice, none of them developed cancer, even though they were all given an initiation of cancer. You see what I'm saying? This is a very important point. So mice that were given a cancer initiation, not all of them developed. In other words, they not all progressed to the second stage. So remember when we were talking about the stages, we had initiation. Promotion is when these damaged cells start to proliferate. And then progression is when the cancer escapes to other parts of the body, to other organs. So we have something called metastasis of the cancer. But what we saw here is that even though they were all initiated with cancer, not all the mice developed cancer. They didn't go to the second stage, which is the promotion of cancer. And they thought this is too much of a difference here. We have 0 and 100, like 0% and 100%. That's too much of a difference. That's hardly ever seen in science, such a stark difference. So what they did is that they switched these two right here, B and D, they switched them to see what would happen. And so the low protein mice were given a high protein diet, and the high protein diet were switched to a low protein diet. And what happened? Well, all the mice in the low protein diet, as I said, none of them had cancer. Once they were switched to the high protein diet, they all started to develop cancer. And the mice in the high protein diet group, all of them had developed cancer. Once they were switched to the low protein diet, the cancer stopped growing, and in some cases it reversed. So the researchers concluded that cancer is almost like it's almost like you can switch it on and off by changing the amount of protein in the diet. And let me show you another way to look at it. Here is the percentage of animal protein in the diet. And here is the development of cancer precursor cells. And what we have is when we have a low percentage of animal protein in the diet, like 5% or 6%, we have low development of cancer cells. Whereas as we start going up, 10%, it goes up a little bit, but not a lot. But look at the difference between 10 and 15%. Do you see what's going on here? Do you see that curve? Do you see the slope of the curve? It was like this, and all of a sudden it goes shoot. It's almost an exponential growth at this point, the way the curve goes, right? It goes shoot so far up, so fast. So the biggest difference we see is between 10 and 15%. And then from 15% to 20%, it still grows, but not as fast. But what we're seeing here is almost like you can switch again. It's almost like it's a light, like you can switch it on and off. It's the same thing. No, at least that's how they characterized it, because it's like, wow, what is going on here? And by the way, I don't know the number in Jamaica, but in the United States, the average American diet is around 17 to 20% animal protein. People usually eat animal protein on a daily basis, whether it's chicken or red meat or dairy products like cheese, especially dairy is beloved. Eggs some people eat eggs every day, so once you're eating some kind of animal product on a daily basis, people are probably above 15%. If you want to be down here, you would have to eat an animal product only once or twice a week. And then you get down to the low percentages right here. But anyway, what we could see from this experiment especially, is that initiation is not the most important part of the cancer development. It's not the initiation so much as is the promotion of cancer, what really counts. By the way, which animal protein was given? I don't know if you could see, it's a little blurry, but it says right here, casein. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with that word. What is casein? Well, it is, here's, by the way, Dr. T. Colin Campbell, if you've never seen a picture of him. What protein consistently and strongly promoted cancer? It's casein, in this case, at least in his experiments, which makes up 87% of cow's milk protein and promoted all stages of the cancer process. And we've had more research than just his, okay? Because, you have to always beware of people that are saying, oh, such and such doctor says such and such thing. Do not go by only when one expert says. We always want to go by, first of all, for me as a Christian, the Bible and inspired writings, because I believe in that. But for people who are non-believers, maybe scientific evidence is more important. But you don't want to base yourself only on one expert or one doctor's opinion. You want to get the majority of what is the preponderance of the evidence say in regards to whatever it is that you're researching. And in the case of cancer, we have plenty of evidence. So let me show you this study. Look at what this study says. Look at the title. It says low protein intake is associated with a major reduction in IGF-1 cancer and overall mortality in the 65 and younger but not older population. What does that mean? Well, first of all, what is IGF-1? IGF-1 is a hormone. It's a growth hormone. It stands for insulin growth factor 1. And it's known to be problematic when we have high levels in adults. Because as a child, if you're still growing, you still need the growth hormone. But once you're an adult, you're not growing anymore. If you have high levels of it, it's known to be problematic. It's known to be risky for cancer. And what they found in this study, here in the summary of the study, you can see I highlighted some text. And right here, it tells us that the respondents ages 50 to 65 who ate a high protein diet. Do you see right here how it says high protein intake? High protein, by the way, this is animal protein. It's very, very difficult to eat a high protein diet, only eating plant proteins, because plant foods are not as concentrated in protein as animal proteins are. So it's almost impossible to eat it's basically very, very difficult unless you're eating a lot of concentrated supplements. Otherwise, it's impossible to eat a high protein diet if you're only eating plant proteins. But right here, what they did is study people who ate a high protein diet, mostly from animal sources. And look at what it says, please. Look at what it says right here. High animal protein intake had a 75% increase in overall mortality. Mortality from all causes, 75% higher. And when it comes to cancer in particular, fourfold. That means 400% higher increase in cancer death risk. 400%. Now, I'm going to make a parenthesis right here because we're talking about cancer. But the next thing that I highlighted here, I find that to be incredibly important to highlight. It's talking about diabetes here. They're just kind of like mentioning it. Oh, by the way, a high protein diet also causes a did you see the number? Fivefold increase in what? Do you see right here? Diabetes mortality across all ages. I wanted to make that distinction right here because as a nutritionist, I worked many years as a nutritionist in a clinic right here in California. I treated people with diabetes. I was supposed to follow the American Diabetes Association guidelines for treating diabetes. And the American Diabetes Association guidelines, they show us a plate. And in that plate, you have the vegetables, you have the carbs, and you have the protein. And you're supposed to limit carbohydrates and emphasize lean proteins. And they were all from animal sources. So we are taught as nutrition experts to teach people to eat more protein. Now, first of all, being part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but also studying in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and from other sources, how to reverse diabetes, not just control diabetes, but reverse it. I found out, aside from what I had studied in the university, I found out that you can reverse diabetes by going on 100% plant-based diets, getting rid of the animal protein. So I didn't follow the ADA guidelines, and I got in a little bit of trouble because the hospital wanted me to follow the ADA guidelines. Anyway, that's total aside. I just wanted to mention that to you, that people with diabetes are told a lot to eat more protein, and it tells us here that it increases their mortality. Okay, going back to cancer, we don't have to consume animal proteins. There's animal proteins in the vegetable kingdom, as you know. There are legumes such as garbanzos and beans and lentils. There's nuts and seeds. Here we have peanuts. Of course, they have protein. We don't have to consume animal-based proteins. Now, let me go through some studies really quick just to show you that all of this has evidence. So right here, here's a study that tells us red meat intake and risk of breast cancer. It goes up, but not just among premenopausal women. This study tells us that adolescent intake of meat, it doesn't even say red, could be all meat, increases breast cancer risk. So what you eat as a teenager can increase your risk for cancer later on in life. Having diabetes, important cause of death in Jamaica. And over here, it tells us diabetes is a factor risk is a risk factor for breast cancer. Diabetes puts us at a higher risk for breast cancer and other types of cancer, but breast cancer more so. And in Australia is a country where a lot of people like to get a lot of sun, they like to sunbathe. Well, it tells us here, not only is excess sun a risk factor for skin cancer, it's our diet as well. And in fact, they found that a diet high in meat and fat, if you read this study carefully, it basically says that a diet high in meat and fat puts us at a higher risk for cancer. Here's another study that's very, very interesting. People are heartbroken when I tell them about this, because here's a study that tells us that the cooking methods for meat also could be important to be careful with. Here in particular, it's talking about grilling. What happens when you put meat on a grill? Oh, people love their barbecue. I don't know about in Jamaica, but here people love their barbecue meat. Well, what happens when you barbecue the meat? Well, it says that it elevates the levels of something called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And it lists a bunch of them right here, and they all have very chemical names. But I just wanted to highlight one, benzopyrene, right here, benzopyrene. I don't know if you could see it. All these chemicals, actually, what happens is when the meat touches the smoke, goes up on the grill, it touches the surface of the meat, whether it's chicken or fish or red meat, whatever it is, it's that smoke that touches the meat, and all these chemicals are produced. And let me just give you the equivalence of this one right here, benzopyrene. The equivalent amount in 1 kilogram, which is 2 pounds more or less, of grilled meat is the equivalent amount of 600 cigarettes, because the same chemical is found in cigarettes. Benzopyrene is found in cigarettes, and the equivalent amount of 1 kilogram or 2 pounds of grilled meat is the same as 600 cigarettes. We've used cigarettes a lot today because it's the most well-known carcinogen. So now we know that eating hot dogs puts us at a high risk, just like tobacco, and now we know grilled meat, same thing. Okay, but the thing is that I wanted to highlight is the following. The same book that I just mentioned, the China study, says this: the results of these, talking about all these studies and other studies, show that, and here is the most important thing you will hear tonight, and it's this: the results of these and other studies show that. Do you see the next word right here? Do you see it? What's the word? Nutrition. These studies show that nutrition is more important in controlling the what? Do you see the word right here? Do you see the word? Promotion. Remember what promotion was? Let's go back so that you don't forget. Promotion is the second stage. It's not the first, it's the second. The second is the growth, the proliferation, the multiplication of those cancer cells. And what that quote right here says, that nutrition is more important in controlling the promotion of cancer than doses of cancer initiators. Why do I say this? Because everywhere I go, hear me out, everywhere I go, I get comments like this. Sister Maria or Dr. Maria, however, like, you know what? Nowadays, even vegetables, even fruits have chemicals. So what's the difference if you eat, some meat or some fruits and vegetables? It's no difference. It's no more dangerous to eat meat than vegetables, because vegetables also have chemicals. They have all these pesticides, all these, fertilizers, all these chemicals that are applied to these crops. So there's no difference. But there is a difference. Do you see right here the difference? The difference is that nutrition is very important in controlling that second stage. Yes, there's a lot of initiators in our environment, but not everything promotes the growth of cancer. And remember the little mice that I told you about? They were all given cancer, but not all of them developed it. Why? Because something in their diet made their cancer go on or off. And what was that in the diet? It was the amount of animal protein. And it's found that animal protein actually helps in the promotion. That's the key. So no, you can't say that all these foods right here, all these fruits and vegetables is the same as eating a burger. It's not the same. It's not the same, because these fruits and vegetables, they have anti-cancer properties. They have antioxidants. They have phytochemicals that you will not find in animal products. So not only, do they not have maybe a lot of toxins that you would find more so in animal products than in vegetable products, because in the vegetable products, you'll find traces. Whereas in the animal products, the animals store those toxins they eat through their diet in their fat. So when we eat the fat from the burger, the pizza, the chicken, whatever, we're consuming a lot of toxins, much more so than when we eat the fruits and vegetables. But not only that, these fruits and vegetables have the anti-cancer properties. Now, let me illustrate this with a very important study. And by the way, here's the name of the study. If you want to look it up, here's the name, here's the authors. What they did was they put some cancer cells in a Petri dish, as you see right here, these little round dishes that you see in labs. And they put cancer cells on the Petri dish. And then they grabbed a bunch of women. They took blood out of the women, and they put the blood on the Petri dish with the cancer cells. And you see right here, the cancer cells pretty much swimming in the blood. Okay. And then they did the following thing. They took these women and put them, as you see right here, on a low-fat, high-fiber diet. They gave them a 100% plant-based diet. And then they repeated the experiment 2 weeks later, only 2 weeks. 2 weeks. They did the same thing. They grabbed the Petri dish, they put the cancer cells, and they got the blood out of these women after eating a plant-based diet for 2 weeks. And what happened? This happened. Do you see the difference? Please pay attention. Do you see the difference between this and this? Before going on a plant-based diet, after going on a plant-based diet. What is going on? After going on a plant-based diet, their blood was able to eliminate the cancer cells. Isn't that amazing? Let me give you one more quote from Dr. T. Colin Campbell, also from the China study. He says the following: cancer, and look at this word again, promotion, that second stage. Cancer promotion is, please look at this word right here. I didn't say it. Dr. T. Colin Campbell said it. So you need to argue with him if you're not in agreement. But he says this: cancer promotion is reversible, depending on whether the initial cancer growth, so that initiation, has the correct conditions to grow. What are the correct conditions? Well, here you go. Here's the correct condition to grow. Here you see no conditions to grow. In fact, this is killing the cancer. What? Remember what we saw with the little mice? No condition to grow, very good condition to grow, depending on the diet. That's why he says that. That's why he says in that quote that cancer promotion, not initiation, but promotion. Now, speaking about cancer of the prostate again, here Harvard Health Publishing, Harvard Medical School is talking about prostate cancer. And they tell us that lifestyle therapy might be something to consider. And then it was studied by Dr. Ornish, who's well known because he did the study where they found that heart disease is reversible. And then he went on to study prostate cancer. Important, because in Jamaica, it's the 5th cause of cancer all by itself. And what did they find in this study? Well, interestingly, first of all, let me show you how they have this picture, a baseline, and then after 1 year later of a lifestyle intervention, which, by the way, included a 100% plant-based diet. That's what the lifestyle intervention was. So we see here before and after. Here's the tumor. It's reduced. And the other thing, directly from the study, is this is what they said. This is what they said. None of the experimental group patients, were the ones eating the 100% plant-based diet and following other lifestyle interventions. So none of them, but 6 patients from the control group was the one not getting the intervention, just following the normal diet. So 6 people from the control group underwent conventional treatment for prostate cancer due to an increase in PSA or progression of the disease in the magnetic resonance imaging. In other words, their cancer started to grow. So they had to intervene with conventional treatment because their cancer grew from the control group. But in the experimental group, no one. The cancer did not grow in any of the patients following the lifestyle intervention. Wow. Why? Because in a plant-based diet, we have anti-carcinogens. We have the antioxidants, such as the vitamins and the minerals and the phytochemicals. These are antioxidants and phytochemicals that fight cancer. Not only do they not help promote it, like animal protein helps to promote it, they're actually fighting it. And so let me just show you real quick, studies about vegetarian risk in cancer, it's reduced risk in cancer. Here, vegetarian vegan diet, where you see it right here in the highlighted text. Vegetarian and vegan diets increase beneficial plant foods and plant constituents, eliminate the intake of red and processed meat. We know that from WHO, those are both carcinogens, and aid in achieving and maintaining healthy weight, which we know obesity is another risk factor. The direct and indirect evidence taken together suggests that vegetarian diets are a useful strategy for reducing risk of cancer. Here's another one speaking about the same thing. Incidence of cancer in vegetarians is lower because we're eating more plant foods like fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are full of antioxidants, anti-carcinogens, but not just fruits and vegetables. Let me just show you real quick a few examples of anti-cancer foods. I'm going to start with the most controversial one. The most controversial food is soy, because most people hear that soy causes cancer. But the evidence doesn't show that. The evidence shows the exact opposite. The evidence showed that the soy isoflavones prevent cancer. They don't increase cancer of the breast or the prostate. In fact, they help to reduce it. Because in the Adventist Health Study #1, they found that Adventist men right here in California, they showed that the Adventist men who consume soy milk every day reduced the risk for prostate cancer 70%. #5, cause of death in Jamaica. Also, flax seeds. I hope you have them available in Jamaica. They're awesome. Flax seeds and chia seeds. Great source of omega-3 fatty acids, anti-inflammatory. Okay, also nuts and seeds, wonderful. All the vitamin E that comes from them and all the other antioxidants and minerals. Mushrooms are especially known for being anti-cancer. By the way, I forgot to put the picture, but also all the cruciferous vegetables, kale, collard greens, cabbage, all those are cruciferous vegetables. They're anti-cancer. And last but not least, of the foods. There's more. I'm just giving you some examples. I don't know if you recognize this picture. You're probably going, what in the world am I looking at? What is that? You know what that is? Seaweed, all types of seaweed. There's something else. I'm going really fast now because I'm out of time. Exercise. Exercise is anti-cancer. But there's something else, okay? I'm not going to have time to go through the evidence on this, but I would invite you to go to my YouTube channel. I only have 3 English videos. I have very few, but there's one that's very important. I put it there in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic. And it's basically 8 strategies for strengthening your immune system. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that your immune system is in charge of eliminating viruses, bacteria, and number 3, cancer cells. You get those initiated cells all the time because you're always exposed to chemicals, too much sun, whatever. There's all kinds of things that initiate cancer in your body, but your immune system and your nutrition are going to play a role in eliminating them. So when the pandemic started, I started talking about how to improve your immune system. And so I invite you to look at that. It talks about exercise, but it talks about all the different steps you can take to reduce your risk for cancer by improving your immune system, which not only helps you to prevent cancer, but also viral infections. All these 8 steps that we know in the Adventist church for over 150 years. Isn't that amazing? They all help to improve your immune system. Now, to end, let me just tell you the story of Dr. Ruth Heidrich. She was 47 years old, and she was an extremely healthy person because at the time she'd been a runner for 14 years. She had run 3 marathons, and she considered her diet to be very healthy. She ate chicken, fish, low-fat dairy, healthy, and she was a runner. The picture of health, except when she was 47. Oh, by the way, she had a great career. She worked in military logistics. She was being groomed to have a position in the Pentagon. And what she didn't know is that she had cancer. She had cancer that had been growing her right breast, and it grew to the size of a golf ball. And so she had to have emergency surgery because the tumor was so big, they had to extract it. And she couldn't believe that it was cancer because she had been so healthy. But not only was it cancer, it was invasive cancer. It later spread to not only through her breast, but to her bones and her lung. When she was recovering from surgery, she saw an ad in the newspaper asking for volunteers for a breast cancer and diet research study. And she called on the phone. She was told to get all her medical records, and she went to see a doctor here in California, Northern California. His name is Dr. John McDougall. I don't know how many of you have heard of him, but he's wonderful. And she went to see him right away. After seeing the results of the research on cancer and diet at the time, she was convinced immediately by Dr. McDougall to go on a plant-based diet, and she left his office as a complete vegetarian, low fat. And she decided, and I'm not saying everybody should do this, but this is what she did. She decided against chemotherapy and radiation and decided to use her diet as the only weapon against cancer, after, of course, having had surgery to remove the tumor. Now, she found that the diet changes were easy. She found them to be easy to implement. She loved the brown rice and the whole wheat bread, oatmeal, vegetables, and she left the chicken and the fish and dairy products out. She added in the vegetables and the whole grains. Her body responded immediately. She found out she had been constipated her whole life, and she didn't even know. Anyway, so after the years went by, let me tell you what happened with her. She became incredible. This lady, this woman, let me just tell you what happened with this woman, okay? She is an Ironman triathlon, eating a completely vegetarian diet. She has completed the Ironman 6 times. at least at the time of this writing, when she wrote her testimony on our webpage. She had completed the Ironman 6 times. She had run 67 marathons. She won over 800 competition trophies and was declared one of the 10 fittest women in America in 1999. At the time she wrote her testimony, she was 67, but she had the physical shape of a 32-year-old woman. Today, she's like in her late 80s, I want to say. She got her PhD in nutrition and exercise physiology, and she's been talking about nutrition ever since. The cancer never came back. She's one of the healthiest, fittest women in the United States. And let me also tell you real quick about the story of Dr. Lorraine Day. You see right here her tumor. She also had like a breast, like in the upper part of the, like in between the two breasts right here in the chest, a terrible tumor. It had to be removed as well. She's a doctor. She works right here, or she used to work. She's now retired many years ago, but she used to work right here in UCF, or University of California, San Francisco. And her colleagues said, you have to get chemotherapy. And she's an Adventist. And she said, no, I'm going to try different. And she tried alternative methods first, and they didn't work. Some herbs, some this and that, nothing worked. And she was almost dying. Her cancer came back after she had the surgery. She removed the cancer, but it came back. And she was dying. And she prayed to God to give her some light. And God brought back to her the 8 principles of health, the 8 principles of health that I mentioned right here. And she incorporated the 8 principles of health and also a positive attitude and thankfulness. And she began drinking juices, and her cancer not only went away, it never came back. And she's also another person who's now in her 80s. It never came back. So I just wanted to give you those 2 testimonies. I've never had cancer, so I don't have a personal testimony, but I wanted to give you 2 stories that I thought were so interesting. Let me finish with a verse. Exodus 15:26 says, if you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his sight and give ear to his commandments and keep all his statutes, which, by the way, we know from Revelation that these statutes and commandments include the laws of health. So if we obey God's law, including the laws of health, the promise is right here for us. I will put none of the diseases on you, which I have brought on the Egyptians. For I am the Lord who heals you. I know some of you would love to be healed, or maybe you know people who need to be healed. They need to know that we have a God in heaven who heals us. He is our healer. He wants to heal each one of us from whatever it is that we may have, whether it's heart disease or high blood pressure or cancer. He wants to heal us. He wants to heal you. So I hope you put all your trust in him and his plan, the 8 laws of health. If you would like more information, I have a website, and it's healthfortoday.net, not .com, .net, healthfortoday.net. And the reason why I wanted to invite you to go into my website is because I have a 10-day challenge. If you've never followed a plant-based diet, you can try it like Daniel. Daniel did it for 10 days and his friends, and in 10 days, you were able to see the difference. So download the 10-day Daniel challenge. There's recipes, there is a menu, and it's just a guideline. You can create your own recipes, because I don't know that many Jamaican recipes. I've known like 1 or 2, but maybe you can adapt what you eat right now to follow the guidelines of a plant-based diet. That's what I invite you to do. Try it for 10 days. If you don't like it, you can always quit it, but at least you could try it, and maybe you will love it. And maybe you will feel so much better that you will want to continue forever, hopefully. So thank you. I'm sorry I went over the time. I always do that. Sometimes I get way too excited. I just wanted to stop sharing my screen. But thank you for the time. Thank you for allowing me to share with you. As you can tell, it's my passion. So thank you so much. I am privileged and honored to have been able to share this with you. And if the organizers want me to answer some questions, I can definitely answer some questions. But thank you so much, and God bless each one of you.
Yes, it's now time for a question and answer segment. If you have a question, could you please raise your hand? I see Brother Morris's hand. Okay, you can go ahead, Brother Morris.
Thank you very much. Sister Maria, what an awesome presentation that was. I could sit here and listen until tomorrow morning. And I know the Lord has used you tonight. And certainly I'm sure my pastor and everybody will support a motion for you to come one day, physically, to do some powerful presentation for us. Well done. And I'm so empowered tonight. I'm fired up, and I'm hoping that we will have you back before the end of this series. But my question to you is, you quoted the Adventist health study, and you spoke about soybean, but I want to find out, was it GMO, regular GMO soy, or non-GMO organic soy that was used in that study?
That's a great question. And the study was done, it was the Adventist study number 1. Yes. And it was done in the 60s and 50s, 60s. So it was probably not GMO, just because of the time of, in the century. I don't think they had GMOs in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, awesome. And a follow-up to that, what's your take on GMO soy, which seems to be the common soy that is utilized today to make most of the products? So include linkets and mints and those things. What's your take on that?
Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. You cut out a little bit. What's my take on?
Most of the soy that we use today, especially in Jamaica, is GMO soy. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our members use, consume linkets and veggie mints and those things. What's your take on it, based on what you said?
That's a great question. Honestly, when I purchase soybeans, which I buy the actual beans to make soy milk myself, sometimes I make tofu myself, I buy organic. I have that peace of mind. In fact, I've even grown soybeans in my own yard, and they're pretty easy to grow. I honestly only purchased organic. And here in the United States, it's more difficult to find GMO soy foods for human consumption, because most of the GMO soy here is used for 2 purposes. Number 1, for feeding cattle and feeding livestock. So animals are fed the GMO soy. And so people who eat the animals are getting the GMO secondhand. And the other purpose that the soy is used for is for making foods, for, ingredients for highly processed foods. So vegetable oil is soy oil. Here in the United States is soy oil. And also a lot of the more isolated proteins are used as ingredients in a lot of highly processed foods. So both corn and soy are mostly GMO here in the United States, but both are used mostly for feeding livestock and for making highly processed foods. So we obtain the GMOs from those highly processed foods, or from secondhand from eating the animal foods. Most of the human soy products they usually say on the label non-GMO, or they say organic. That's what I would recommend, just because we don't know for certain what the long-term consequences of consuming GMO foods might be. So you're probably going to be on the safe side if you stick to only organic, grow your own, or buy organic, if possible.
Thank you. Amen.
Pastor Ro, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Maria. The 2 questions I have, but the one you had just answered that Elder Michael had asked Right. So the other one, well, let me also say that I found your presentation to be quite simple. We kind of think that this whole matter of cancer and treating it is a complex thing, not easily to be understood. But I'm happy tonight for the way in which you explained how you can go about treating it. All right, so the little concern, as you had shared the experience of the lady with the cancer. Well, the first person you had shared, right? I've known persons who discovered that they have cancer, and they would say that they have changed their lifestyle to the plant-based, and they had gone to different consultants and all of that. But they weren't, as the lady you mentioned, they have eventually died under the treatment of that changed lifestyle. So when you share that testimony, I was wondering, you say it can be totally reversed by the changing of the lifestyle, the eating habit. You can just elaborate on that for me.
If the question is, can it be? It's hard to know with certainty because, as I explained at the beginning of the presentation, it hasn't been studied. And the reason why it hasn't been studied, like with the control group and, doing that, it's because it's not allowed, at least in the United States. So we only can go by anecdotal evidence, and we can go by circumstantial evidence of what, the epidemiological studies tell us. So epidemiologically, in other words, population-based studies tell us that the more plants we eat, the less chances we have of developing cancer, because populations that eat plant-based have almost no cancer. But it's hard to tell clinically if we can put someone on a plant-based diet. It probably depends on more than just one factor. So diet is one factor. The rest of their lifestyle is also very important. So are they sleeping? Do they have a lot of inflammation? So inflammation sometimes comes from other factors other than diet. It could be that they're, consuming cancer-causing, what if they're smoking or drinking? Or if they're not sleeping well, not drinking enough water, or they're not exercising. So it's a multifactorial process to really help someone hopefully reverse their cancer. So I wanted to give you those anecdotes just to show you that there have been cases, but it's hard to know for sure. Someone who's in a late stage cancer, could they possibly reverse it? I would say the following: it will never, never, ever, ever hurt them to be on a plant-based diet, because we know that is the diet that's best for human beings. So it is the correct diet for human beings. So once we give the body that correct environment for healing, as some of these very famous doctors, like this book right here, How Not to Diet, comes from Dr. Michael Greger. And one of his quotes says that the best kept secret in medicine is that under the right conditions, the body can heal itself. Of course, he's not a Christian. If he was a Christian, he would probably say the body was made by God to heal itself. And it does, it does heal itself, but we have to give it the right conditions. And the right conditions mostly include all the 8 principles of health. Not just diet, it would have to be all of them. Because we can have a perfect diet, but maybe we're sleeping 4 hours a night, or we're smoking or drinking, coffee or whatever it is. We're not exercising, we're not drinking water, different things that can still put us at a higher risk. So, but if we do follow those 8 principles, it gives us a foundation for good health. So I would say in the case of cancer, especially if it's in an early stage, you could most definitely help it to not grow as fast, maybe even reverse. We don't know for sure. We have to look at the whole case. But I would think that giving the person a whole food plant-based diet is the best chance they have at least stopping the cancer, or at least slowing it down.
Yes, I'm satisfied. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question.
Okay, so we have Brother Monroe and then Brother Morris. Oh, go ahead, Brother Monroe.
All right, thank you, Sister Maria, for such a powerful presentation. I just want to ask about oncogenes. Oncogenes, and we're told that there are foods that are tumor suppressor or repressor food, and there are some foods that facilitate the growth of cancer, as you mentioned earlier. But could you just explain about the oncogenes for us, if you can?
It's a very fascinating question, because we have found that, yes, people do have genetic predispositions, not just to cancer. I probably have a genetic predisposition to cancer, being that it's in my family. But people have predispositions to heart disease or to diabetes. And most of us have some kind of predisposition, because we live in a very sinful world and our bodies are not perfect anymore. They're in fact damaged through so many thousands of years of sin, as the inspiration tells us. But the interesting thing is lifestyle. And so both diet and the other principles of health can either turn on or off these genes. So you're very correct to mention that, because we know that lifestyle can activate or disactivate certain genes for certain diseases, for different diseases. And it's mostly through that, what they call epigenetics. So some epigenetic changes can occur if we change our lifestyle. So we can turn off those genes. So the interesting thing is that when we a couple of decades or 2 or 3 decades ago, when we discovered, when we finally discovered the whole genome of the human body, and we thought genetics is going to be everything. And then we have discovered now that it's not necessarily everything, because genes do not determine our destiny. They can be turned on or off depending on our lifestyle. So I don't think people need to be too concerned about whether they have. Now, there's certainly some diseases that are mostly genetic. So we know that there's genetic defects that create certain conditions that we can't do anything about. But for the most part, our health is not determined by genetics. That could be 10 to 15% of our risk at the most. Whereas our lifestyle probably determines 60 to 70% of our health. So our health is mostly in our hands if we follow the correct lifestyle, including the diet. So yes, a plant-based diet can help to turn on and turn off those genes, like you correctly mentioned.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so two quick ones from me. One, the role of supplements in cancer prevention. Could you say something on that? And the second question would be, is it important for us to do an internal cleanse from time to time? Some people disagree with it. I just wanted to hear your take on that one.
Those are great questions. So first, on the supplements, I have a mixed view on that. So first of all, I would say that people who follow a plant-based diet or not, we should all think about the possibility of consuming a vitamin B12 supplement, just because vitamin B12 is not produced by plants or by animals. It's produced by microorganisms that used to be much more abundant in our environment before we started putting so many chemicals, especially in the soil, killing the soil organisms. Now soil where crops grow is mostly sterile. It has no life in it because of all the different, pesticides that are applied on crops nowadays. And also the water. We eliminated cholera and a lot of other bad bacteria, but we have also eliminated good bacteria. And therefore, we have eliminated, for the most part, the bacteria that produces vitamin B12 that people used to get it just by pulling out, carrots or sweet potatoes or whatever from the soil, and they would get it there. But nowadays it's much more difficult. Additionally, people after a certain age, they start absorbing less of it. Vitamin B12 is harder to absorb than other vitamins, and it has several steps. And if any of those steps are missing, we don't absorb it correctly. So a lot of people, both vegetarian and non-vegetarian, are deficient or very borderline deficient. So I would suggest everybody should take, just as a precaution, a vitamin B12 supplement, hopefully one that you can put under the tongue, which then gets absorbed into the tissues under your tongue and directly into your bloodstream, as opposed to having to go through your digestive system, which can then lower the amount that you actually absorb. So I would get that. Other than that, in Jamaica, you probably don't have deficiency of vitamin D unless you spend too much time indoors. So vitamin D is one that we make in our skin by exposing our skin a sufficient amount of time so that the vitamin D is produced. And a lot of people, at least here in the United States, from African American descent, are too low in vitamin D because they don't spend enough time outside, or people who live too high in latitude, so New York and I don't know, Massachusetts or something. Here in California, we're blessed with a lot of sun, but a lot of other states that are too high north, they don't get enough sun, so they might have deficiency of vitamin D. That's one that I would say it's important for your immune system. So I would, include that if you're not getting enough sun. Other than that, I would say supplements are needed only if there's a deficiency. So if someone has a deficiency of iron, for instance, and they have iron deficiency anemia, I would say yes, supplement until you get to a higher level, and then you can maintain with a diet-only approach. And most people can get all of the nutrients needed. And when it comes to antioxidants, they have found that antioxidants from food are better than antioxidants from supplements. So I would try to get most of your nutrition from food rather than supplements, because in the food, God put them in the right package with all the proportions correct, all the right combinations, and they work synergistically to give us the best benefit. Whereas if we get them from a bottle, it's made from humans, and we don't always know what we're doing. And we don't always we never do better than God, that's for sure. So we always get best results when we get the food that God made in its most natural state possible. So that's for supplements. And I forgot what the other thing was that you asked me.
Internal cleanse.
Oh, cleansing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's debatable. I would say it's a good thing to go on a little fast once in a while. So fasting has been shown to be the great cleanser. Fasting actually enhances our ability to detoxify. And I personally actually encourage, I talk about in intermittent fasting a lot lately. It has become a fad, but really it was given to us by revelation over 150 years ago. But eating 2 meals is better than 3, she told us. I personally didn't even pay attention to that until I saw the evidence. Terrible. I feel really bad about that. But the evidence convinced me that eating 2 meals is better than 3. Because when you do eat 2 meals and you fast the rest of the day, you enhance elimination, you enhance detoxification and repair the damage. All of that is enhanced. The healing properties of your body are much more enhanced while you're fasting. And so doing a once a week fast is a great thing. Doing a daily fast as an intermittent fasting is a great thing. And if you're following a plant-based diet and doing that, you probably don't need to do a yearly cleansing. Some people benefit from that. There's some that are kind of questionable, but I think fasting and a plant-based diet, a combination of those things, of course, drinking a lot of water, are the best ways to cleanse your body. That's my personal opinion on that.
Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you for your questions.
Brother Monroe, before you go, we have a question on YouTube. The person is asking, can green vegetable juice help with cancer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, Dr. Lorraine Day, the second lady that I showed, that she had this big ball right here, like she had this tumor, she, aside from following a completely plant-based diet, she juiced a lot. And she used carrot juice and green juices. And what we do when we juice, especially for cancer, because cancer patients don't always absorb all the nutrients. They have a hard time sometimes digesting food as normal. So when you put it in a juice format, you eliminate the fiber, which is very important otherwise. So if you don't have a very severe disease, you probably don't need to do juices. Maybe smoothies would be better, because then you preserve the fiber, and fiber is very important for our microbiota, our gut bacteria. But for cancer and other very serious diseases, the juicing concentrates those micronutrients, those vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. And green juices in particular have the highest concentration of minerals and vitamins and antioxidants, because green leafy vegetables, I think God gave them to us for a reason. You see in Genesis 3:18, God says, after sin entered the world and God eliminated the tree of life, but then God tells Adam and Eve, you shall eat herbs of the field. So he added that to the diet, these green vegetables, because they're so concentrated in nutrients that we need, absolutely need. I think we need to eat them on a daily basis. And I'm serious about that. I think every day we should eat a lot of green vegetables, like at least 170 grams. So you calculate how much that is. And maybe some of us will not, we can eat a salad, but maybe we can't eat a salad this big. So maybe some of that could be put in a smoothie. I think for people who don't have cancer or other serious diseases, a smoothie is better. But for people who have cancer, juicing is probably better, just because it concentrates them more. And they definitely need that mega vitamin, dose that can come in a juice. So I would definitely say yes, juicing, green juices, 100% yes.
Okay, thank you. Your time, Brother Monroe.
All right, my final question that I'd like to ask is, does one's skin color impact the absorption of vitamin D?
Yes, for sure. So the lighter the skin, the less time they could be outside. If it gets red, they're already getting burned. And the darker the skin, the more time we need to be outside. So if we're not spending enough time outside, we need to spend a little bit more. So people of darker skin should probably, I would say, at least half an hour a day. Whereas people with very pale skin, probably 10 minutes a day. So that's probably the range. Some, people olive skin that are more Hispanic, probably, or Middle Eastern, for instance, probably 20 minutes. So those are very rough estimations. It all depends. Some people are, of African-American or African descent, but they're lighter in skin. Or some people are darker in skin. Same with Hispanics. Hispanics, some of them are very light, some of them are darker. So it all depends. I would say the darker the skin, the more time needs to be spent outside to get that vitamin D, whereas people who are very pale need to be very careful because they tend to burn very quickly. But I would say people who are very, very pale, they actually need to train their skin a little bit better. Because if we're very, I used to be the kind of person that my legs were so white, they look purple almost. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy to be that white necessarily, because that means that our skin burns too quickly. It's too fragile. So what I did myself is that I started spending a little bit of time every day in the sun. I started maybe 15 years ago. I said, I'm too pale. I need to spend a little bit more time in the sun. So started by 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, but I was the kind that I would get super red. And that's very dangerous for people who are too pale and they burn too quickly. they're higher risk for skin cancer. So they need to spend a little bit more time in the sun to train their skin to be able to not burn so easily. So people who are very pale need to train their skin a little bit better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that great question.
Okay, thank you so much for all the questions. We are so thankful for Maria here doing this presentation for us tonight. We thank you so much, and we would like everyone to send Gracia in the chat and tell her thank you for this presentation. We are just about to close. We don't want to keep you any longer, so we'll now have our closing prayer.
Before I pray, I just want you to know that Sister Maria will be on tomorrow evening again. And what will be your topic again, Sister Maria, tomorrow evening?
I have to check because I forgot.
We have food
to check
addiction. We have food addiction and nutrition without confusion. So you'll be doing food addiction tomorrow?
Yes.
All right. So everybody, get your friends out, get your family members out. Sister Maria will be doing food addiction tomorrow evening. I just want to add my quote of thank you for coming on, for giving us such a great presentation, Sister Maria. And we pray God will continue to be with you as you use your knowledge in his service. So let us pray. Our Father and our God, we just want to thank you for the knowledge that we have gained. Merciful Father, you have made provision for us to be healthy. And so we ask you, O Lord, that we will take on board that knowledge that you have given to us to make us healthier persons. In so doing, we'll be better Christians because we'll have healthier bodies in order to go and to tell others of how good you are. Merciful God, we thank you for Sister Maria, who has dedicated her time and to work in your service for the better of mankind. I pray, oh God, you'll continue to bless her, continue to enlighten her, continue to use her, merciful God. And Lord, I know that when she's used like this, the enemy does not like it. And so I ask you for a special covering over her, over her household, merciful God. And that, Father, at the end of it, lives will be born for your kingdom. Continue to be with us. Give us now a good night's rest. And for your will and for your purpose, we pray you'll wake us up again tomorrow and you'll set us on our way rejoicing. And we'll remember to give you the glory, the honor, and the praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone. Remember to share the link.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night, Sister
Good
Maria.
night.
Good
Good
night. Good night, night.
God bless you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Or
See you tomorrow.